suffragan bishop of the Diocese of West Texas. I could introduce her, but the point of this is for her to introduce herself to you. She was ordained bishop March. Here she is in May. So this is her first time here. So yeah, I wanted to make this afford this opportunity for us to get to know her and for her to get to know you. So without further ado, please give a St. Thomas welcome. Bishop Cortiñas.
Good morning. It's good to be here. So I thought I'd introduce myself a little bit more because since I came from outside of this diocese and sort of new here, it might help if you knew a little bit more about me. I'm finding that folks don't know much about me, and then I'm just going to open it up to questions because it's really more about getting to know each other, I think. So as he said, I am your new suffragan bishop, elected back in October and consecrated just March 15th. So I'm fairly new to all this bishop stuff. So be patient. And I'm certainly new to the diocese here, but just so you know some about me, I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. My parents were Cuban immigrants. They came in the early 60s with one baby in tow, my oldest sister, Maria, and they came in 62. They arrived on Valentine's Day, 1962. So my parents had to flee as they were sort of being targeted then by the communist government, and so they had to get out. And they came with nothing. They dropped all their studies. They were both in medical school, and my mom immediately started working to help my dad get him through his residency and so that he could start practicing. And I am one of 8 children, nice big Catholic family. And I am number 7 of 8, so I have one younger sister. Born and raised in Miami, Florida. Grew up in Catholic school most of my life. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school run by nuns. My undergraduate degree was in environmental studies from Florida International University. And then for grad school, I went to the University of Memphis. And I got my first graduate degree was in city and urban planning. Graduated from there in 1995. And went back to Florida and did nothing with that degree. I ended up getting a job doing computer consulting and did that for about 5 years. During that time, I met my husband, who is Canadian, and we ended up settling in Pennsylvania, and I ended up leaving consulting because it was a lot of being on the road, and I got a job working in the IT department for a small biopharmaceutical company called Centocor in Malvern, Pennsylvania. About a year into that, that company merged with Johnson & Johnson. So I ended up working for Johnson & Johnson company for several years, worked for different parts of the company, the biopharmaceutical pharma group for a while. And then I went and worked for Cordis, which was their medical device company back in Miami. I had one daughter. Her name is Victoria. She was born in 2001. She just celebrated her 24th birthday just this past week. And my husband passed away, actually, unfortunately, in December of 2004, on Christmas Day of 2004. It was immediately following not immediately, but a couple months immediately following a kidney transplant, so some complications from that. And it was probably a year after his death that I started discernment within the Episcopal Church. I had joined the Episcopal Church when I was a young adult living in Memphis. A friend of mine invited me to an Episcopal church, and I was like, where have you been all my life? There were two very influential people in my life when I was a young girl growing up in Miami, and they were two priests that were friends of my mom's, also came from Cuba. One was a Jesuit priest, and another was a missioner priest who did mission work in Honduras in South America, and he ran an orphanage there. His name was Jesus. And I remember having a conversation with him when I was little, saying that I wanted to do what he did when I was an adult. And he said, well, you can't, because we don't ordain women in the Catholic Church. And he goes, well, you could be a nun. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be a nun. They don't have any fun. So I sort of put that to rest. And it wasn't until I joined the Episcopal Church that sort of nudging sort of started again. And it was after my husband's death that I started looking into that. But I found my home and a place where I felt I belonged for the very first time in the Episcopal Church. And I became Episcopal in 1994 when I was 24 years old. And it's been my home ever since. I went to seminary in 2007 with a 6-year-old, a very shy, quiet 6-year-old in tow, and graduated 3 years later in 2010 with a very different child. That time in seminary was very formational for me and for her, and very healing for us as well. And then I returned to South Florida, where I served 2 parishes there, All Saints Episcopal Church in Fort Lauderdale for 2 years. And then I went to a large program church in downtown Boca Raton, and I was there for 5 years before I was called to the Diocese of Texas to be the rector of St. Thomas, your namesake, St. Thomas Episcopal Church in College Station, so Aggie Town. And so the church is directly across the street from what I call the other temple, which is the football stadium. Served there for about 4.5 years through COVID, got them through COVID, got them through some damage, did some really good work there. And then went through some transitions there. My daughter went off to college and ended up taking an associate rector position in Austin, Texas, also in the Diocese of Texas, at St. David's Episcopal Church, historic, oldest church in the diocese, actually, in Austin, and served there for about 4 years as well. Before, lo and behold, someone from your diocese called me up and asked me if I would submit my name for the new suffragan bishop position, and then that whole journey began. So that's a little bit about myself. My daughter went to UC Davis, graduated there in 2023, and to my chagrin decided she would stay there, and she's working for the university now in Davis, California. She's adulting, she's doing her thing, and quite proud of her as well. So that's a little bit about my journey and how I ended up in West Texas. I've been doing visits since I started the position as the suffragan bishop-elect beginning of January, and I'm learning a lot about your diocese, especially how vast it is. So I want to say I've officially crossed over 13,000 miles on the car since the middle of January. So but yeah, I'm enjoying it. And every church is different. Every church has a different vibe, has a different culture. You've got a beautiful place here, a beautiful church, and I'm really excited to be with you here today. So I'm going to open it up and see if you all have any questions for me. Yeah. Suffragan means, it doesn't mean you suffer. But if you look at the word suffragan, sort of like back during the time of suffrages, right? like being advocating for. So if you think of it as the word to advocate. So I am the advocate for the diocesan bishop. There's also another translation of the word to be to pray for. And so it's another fancy word. You know, Episcopalians have a special word for everything. But it's basically like an assisting bishop. The big difference is that just like the diocesan bishop is elected and goes through that whole discernment period, the suffragan bishop is the same. An assisting bishop in some of the other dioceses are just appointed by the diocesan to help out, usually in a part-time position. So that's the big differentiator there. But it's an assisting bishop. I basically am a full bishop. I get to, you know, there's apostolic succession. I lay on hands. I can do all the sacraments. There are some key differences because he's diocesan. When it comes to certain canonical things like elections and things like that, he's the one who has access to be able to do things that I can't. So like when there's a new bishop is elected, there's a consent period. He consents, I don't. Only the diocesan bishop consents for new bishops. So there's a couple other things too that he can do that I can't. But other than that, I'm a full bishop just like he is. Yes? A coadjutor bishop is basically my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically a bishop who's been elected, diocesan bishop who's been elected, who has not taken over the position of bishop as of yet. He hasn't been consecrated, so it's basically that. Does that make sense? Is that correct? Yeah. Yes. What do I think the diocese needs to get going on? I mean, there's a few things. I mean, there's certainly a lot of opportunity in terms of areas that are seeing a huge amount of growth. And so in that sense, I agree that there's opportunity to plant churches and to sort of align ourselves with growth. I do believe that the Episcopal Church hasn't kept up with changes, right, that have been going on in terms of growth in cities. And so I think planting churches and having that missional nature is really important. I think in an area, in a time where we're seeing a little bit of boost in numbers in some of the churches, people are seeking God in different ways, feeling a little lost. And I think we need to sort of build up on that. The other thing that, at least in my position, that I've noticed is that there are several churches and clergy out there who are just tired or feel very alone. So I feel, particularly in my position, is to help build community and sort of inspire them and help them get this infusion of the Spirit. You can call it, there's a little bit of some complacency, I think, in some of the more remote churches. And so there's an opportunity there to really reach out to them, help them feel connected and inspired, to collaborate in that. So I think those are some of the areas I think would be really great. Yes. Yeah. I think sometimes we fall into, because of fear or whatever, and we feel like we need to do something different, we sort of jump on the bandwagon of we need to be more like them. And I have to be honest with you. I think we need to live more deeply into what it means to be Episcopal. I think what we offer is a depth of spirituality, a depth of tradition, and what I'm seeing, particularly in the churches that are seeing growth and growing, it is attracting some of the younger people because they're living into a way of being that seems more transparent and authentic, and I think it's really about authenticity. So I would say living more deeply into what we are about and differentiating ourselves as a place where people can really have a deep sense of belonging. And I would say majority of churches across the whole spectrum, and that includes a lot of the big non-denom churches, are also seeing some challenges in growth as well, believe it or not. And a lot of the folks that we're seeing, at least in previous churches that I was at, were people who have been sort of hurt or who have left sort of non-denom churches are now seeking something different. Yeah. Yeah, it is marketing, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge, right? I think part of that is also, I think what you've seen with a lot of the non-denom movement is that they're planting churches in areas that are specifically growing, right? So my understanding, and I'm learning a lot about San Antonio, is that corridor that you were just talking about has been growing. That's the growth place, and that's where they're planting churches. And so we're jumping on that bandwagon a little late, but that's what our strategy is now. If we look at St. Nicholas and Bulverde as a perfect example, growing by leaps and bounds because that area is growing by leaps and bounds. And so I think that has been their strategy. And because, they get sort of like these strip mall offices where they start building and they're a little bit more mobile, is that they're able to adjust to that change and where areas are growing. And I think the Episcopal Church, when you look back at when we were growing in the 1950s at our peak, we were planting churches that were permanent, and some of those areas now are not growing, right? And so some of those churches are seeing decline because growth has happened this way. So if the church can learn to be and invest in places and be a little bit more flexible about what we do with properties and how we grow, I think we can start seeing some strategic growth as well. And so the nice thing is people like Mike, your rector, who serve on the church planting committee, and the bishop see that opportunity, particularly on this I-35 corridor in and around San Antonio, and sort of looking at areas where we can start planting churches and get the Episcopal brand out there, so to speak. Yeah. Yes. Relevant to culture. I think keeping ears that listen and hearts that are open, I think first and foremost. I think when I look at my daughter's generation in particular, I see a generation that, at least with conversations with my daughter, they can sort of see through the forgive me, through the BS. But they're also very authentic. They want to make a difference, but they're also full of anxiety too. And they want to feel listened to. They want to feel accepted. So I think not coming to sort of this new generation with just being open to listen to what their concerns are, But then also being willing to journey with them and sharing what we have to offer as well in the Episcopal Church. I would say that my daughter and a lot of her friends want to make a difference, and they want to belong. And I would say creating a sense of belonging is probably one of the most important things to do as a church, where people feel welcomed and that you're doing important work. If you're just saying something but not living into it, it becomes very obvious to them that is the case. And so living out our lives like we say we are becomes really, really important. So.
The relatively new presiding bishop, if I'm hearing it correctly, we talked about getting more resources. Have you seen evidence of that happening, or what are your expectations?
Yeah. So, okay, I'm a fairly new bishop, so I am still learning what it means. And so what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from the national church, and that was very evident at the last House of Bishops meeting, is that he does want to change the way the national church is functioning. So for a long time it was send us your money, and they had this huge structure out there, and no one really knew what the national church was doing, and just getting help. And I've seen, just in my very short time, a change in that. Even the way the House of Bishops was run, there was a lot of listening sessions, a lot of conversation about really difficult and important matters that they haven't talked about for as long as not I can remember, but from what some of the other bishops were saying. So in conversations with bishops who'd been in the House of Bishops for 12 plus years, they said hands down that was one of the best House of Bishops meeting they've ever been to, because of the conversations that were going on and because of just some of the initial changes that Sean has started to do. And so I will also say that he's just happened. He invited me to be part of the design team for the next House of Bishops. So he's really trying to target some of the newer folks that are coming in to be sort of change agents as well about what do you see are the needs. And so, which is something that's kind of unheard of. But change takes time, particularly with an institution like this. And if you look at just the history and the traditions, right? And it's not always up to him either, because then there's this other institution called the House of Deputies, right? That also has, power as well. So, yeah, I mean, I'm starting to see it, and I'm really hopeful. And he is very much an organizational leadership kind of guy. And really, he's crazy smart. So he's going to bring a different kind of leadership than Michael Curry had. I think what we had in Michael Curry was what we needed at that time. And I do believe the Spirit calls people to a particular place and time. And I think we're already starting to see some of the things that he's doing, just in his way of being. I will also say, I was really impressed at my consecration at the rehearsal dinner. I was sitting with my daughter at a table, and I got up to go greet all the different tables that were gathered, and he saw that. He got up and went straight to where my daughter was and sat right next to her and sparked up a conversation with her. And she came up to me and she goes, "Do you know what just happened? We had the best conversation," and they went on. And then he circled back and he said, "It was such a joy to sit down and get to know your daughter. She's an amazing human being. You did a great job." And I was like, so I think he needs our prayers. It's not an easy time to be the leader of the Episcopal Church right now. And so definitely keep praying for him. And he is, I believe, he's there now, but he was invited to be at the consecration, inauguration, whatever you call it, of the new Pope in Rome. With no Archbishop of Canterbury, he is essentially the primate for the church right now, and so the new Pope is from the United States, so he's there representing the Anglican Communion. So prayers for Sean Rowe, please. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I that is definitely a question that I don't know how to answer. Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm happy to take that back to the diocese and have conversations about how we can sort of use it as an opportunity. I believe there are lots of opportunities moving forward, not just with Episcopal schools. One of the things, my daughter is a result of Episcopal school education as well. She did Episcopal school for her primary elementary school years, and I believe it was very formational for her. I believe she is who she is and compassionate and was able to get through a difficult time in her life because she was at an Episcopal school. And I do believe we offer an excellent level of education, like no other, with a great foundation of creating compassionate, loving human beings. So I do believe there's an opportunity there. And I also believe there's opportunity with the Episcopal Church in other areas around affordable housing and other things with a lot of the property that we have. And that was one of the conversations we ended up having at the national level is how do we create endowment with property? How do we create opportunities for marginalized, maybe it's healthcare, maybe it's where we are actually living our church values in other areas besides just Sunday worship. So that's another area of opportunity for us to particularly look at the land that the Episcopal Church has. How do we use that land in other ways that not only can become revenue streams, but also provide services in different ways, so that we are healing, we are educating, we are forming and building community, even outside of the four walls of the church. Yeah, 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 yeah. There's huge opportunities. And so when people say the church, declining or all this kind of stuff, I see opportunities. I see opportunities everywhere to live more deeply into our faith. And I'm really excited that I'm in a diocese that's not only resourced well, but also has an amazing diocesan bishop who has an incredible vision and who thinks in similar ways. So a lot of these conversations are happening, believe it or not. But I'm by no means an expert to the voucher system and how that works. Yeah. So, but I do believe, there's an opportunity there as well. Okay. I went to Seminary of the Southwest in Austin, Texas. Apparently, Mike Mickey went there too. And then I'm also working currently on my master's in divinity through Austin Presbyterian Seminary. I've done all my coursework, and now I'm just trying to get that final project written up and delivered, which is proving to be a challenge with all the time I'm on the road right now. So pray for me around that too, because I need to get it done. Yes. Geographically remote, but also like just small rural churches in the diocese. We have about 87 churches. Yeah. I was a Redeemer Eagle Pass last Sunday. But that's an interesting church, it being a border community. You have the 8 o'clock service and then the later service. And the service that's growing is the bilingual, multicultural service. So huge opportunity there too in terms of growth for that church. But clearly it's a church that also needs I mean, it needs some work. Absolutely. Oh, gosh. I think prayers. I think first and foremost, prayers. The work of bishop is exhausting, I will say that. And so balancing time to just take care of myself. I was at college for bishops last week, and then there's just a lot of driving time. And I'm in a unique situation that I was widowed. I don't have a spouse. I do this pretty much alone. My daughter lives in California. So it gets a little lonely sometimes. So prayers for sure. And you know what? Get involved. Support your rector. Support your church. If you're not engaged in some ministry here at the church, do it. Live out your baptismal covenant. You all we're going to renew that here today, our baptismal covenant, and living into that. And it shouldn't be all left into the hands of your rector and associate rector. It should be the church as a whole. So sign up, help out in ministries, get others, invite people to come to church. Talk about your church. Bring people. I don't know why we are so scared to invite people to come with us. Personal invitation is the main thing. So that's the way you can help me expand the kingdom of God. What's the difference? I would say the Episcopal Church is very much like the Catholic Church in theology and our teachings. I think the main difference is in our polity and how the church is structured and how the politics of the church are done. So if they love the core value and theology behind the Catholic Church, but they don't particularly like the way women or just priests live out their life, an Episcopal church is very similar in that way, and that's what it was for me. When I walked into an Episcopal church, I was like, wow, there's such a comfort in knowing the worship, because I could jump right in, but where it was different was that I had a place as a woman. Like, I could serve at the altar, I could become a deacon, I could become a priest. Priests were married. That made so much more sense to me. Yeah. I mean, I think that would be the core thing. Catholic light is what they say, or Catholic without the guilt, but you still have guilty Episcopalians. So I don't know if I buy into that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We go direct, yeah. I mean, there's the little things like that that are a little different, but yeah. All right.
Next Sunday, come right back here, this very spot, because we're having a Memorial Day breakfast next Sunday. So come early, stay late for that. Don't forget. And cheers.
Thank you.